think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Money Level Show, where we think, act, and prosper. And today I got a special guest with me. He is returning to the show. We are very appreciative of his time and being able to share his knowledge and wisdom with the audience and the people in the YouTube universe and also the other platforms that we share this on. So just want to welcome back Dave Morgan. How you doing today?
Daryl, I'm doing well. Thank you.
That's good. That's good. So last time we talked, we talked quite a bit about the metals, and I've been doing some stacking. I believe, we were texting each other. I told you I need to go to counseling, and I'm dead serious about that. I've been spending a lot of money on metals, and I'm getting into these collectors and pieces of silver and stuff. And so it's becoming more than just stacking for the apocalypse. It's becoming like a hobby and the art.
Well, very good. I am all for, silver investors throughout the spectrum, but got to be a little careful on collectibles. But I think what you might be referring to is some of these more interesting low minted silver rounds that are very, very unique. And I have several of those myself. And if you're paying pretty close to bullion price for them, it's not a bad hobby to have. I have a few from the local mines here that maybe ran off, I don't know, a few hundred, maybe 1,000 type of coins commemorating, the opening of the mine, the closing of the mine or something. And, they're fun to have.
Yeah. I'm really into, I bought a Noah's Ark piece a little bit ago. It's the colorized one. And then I've got I think one I recently bought. I bought the Marty McFly and Doc Brown. So I'm into a lot of that. So it's been an interesting way to stack. So you've recently talked. I heard you on Stansberry recently. You talked, about monetary policy, the CBDCs, and some of the issues with the banking system. I've talked with my audience about the banking system, and me personally, I have a hard time leaving cash in the bank, even though I know I need it, at some point. But what's your current view on the monetary policy? The Fed's talking about tightening, then they're back and forth. Are they lying to us, or what's going on? What do you think is going on?
Well, the story has been set for quite a while, as maybe, I'm not sure which interview you're referring to, but I did a few regarding the 50th anniversary of Nixon closing the gold window on August 15th, 1971. And that was sort of the beginning of the end. And he was pretty much forced to do it because, we went off the gold or the gold cover standard, the Bretton Woods Agreement, let's say, where every ounce of gold was set at $35 the ounce. And of course, the U.S. reneged on that and printed more dollars than there was gold to back it up. Their bluff was called, so Nixon had to blame it on the speculators, which is opposite of the truth. It should be blamed on the fiscal policy, the monetary policy of the United States, because they reneged again on the promise. So where does it go from here? Well, you degrade the currency until, it becomes worthless, and then worthless. And this is the direction that we've been going at a higher rate since 1971, the last 50 years. And what remains now is a small vestige of hope that we can hold on to this quote unquote dollar for a while longer, and we will. It is still the best of all the printed money out there. And so the idea is that the money of last, or should say the currency of last resort, will be the dollar. As we get into the final phase of the destruction of the currency, or the currency crisis as I refer to it, there's got to be a backup plan. And I'm sure that the central banks of the world, the IMF, the Bankers Bank, have ideas about the central bank digital currency and how they're going to move everybody over to digital, which they pretty much have done already. I mean, most people use digital dollars off of their debit card, credit card, their phone, their Amazon account, or whatever. In fact, how you deposit checks now. A lot of people just take a picture of the check and it instantly deposits in their account. So almost everything is digital already.
So convenient.
That's right. But there is some physical cash left. And so I just propose this ownership theory of money theory that was written about years ago that if you, precious metals people say, if you can't hold it, you don't own it. I said, well, what if you applied that to the banking system? And of course, the end result, if everybody thought that way, of course, very few will, very few even hear my interviews, although both of them got a lot of views, it'd be a bank run. I mean, you couldn't back up the amount of currency that's promised in digital form in physical form. So it's really a parallel to the same thing that's in the precious metals themselves. You couldn't produce enough physical metal versus the paper equivalent. So I just want to bring that parallel to people's minds, because as the system continues to unravel, more and more people will seek physical currency rather than a promise to pay. And, is there going to be a run on the ATMs, and are people going to be lining up the banks, and will there be a true bank run? I highly doubt it. But there could be areas on the ATM side where you see ATMs run out of cash. And that's already actually happened, although it's never reported in the mainstream. But during the 2008 financial crisis, there were some pretty well-heeled Wall Street types that went to the ATM, and who knows what their withdrawal limits are, thousands of dollars probably, and they couldn't get them because one of their buddies got there first. So that's sort of an overview of everything. Where's it going to go? I don't even know if the bankers know. I mean, they know it's going to fail or it's failing, and I'm sure they have a backup plan. But the question really remains, Daryl, I think this is very important, is just because they want it to go a certain way, just because they want a central bank digital currency, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to take place. There's a lot of issues moving it from the current system, which is mostly digital, to full digital, cashless society, social credit rating like they have in China, and all that taking place smoothly. They can implement it, but there'll be some pushback, and there could be a lot of software issues or, let's just say, problems whenever you do something that massive and, in the financial system. So tough times, perhaps. Interesting times for sure. I'll give it back to you, Daryl.
Yeah, definitely. I and that's kind of one of my the cons of cryptocurrencies is like we still, use the commercial banking system to, turn it into cash and then use that cash to buy, assets and stuff. And so, that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm like still kind of not hesitant on it. I own some cryptocurrencies, but it's like, okay, until I can send peer to peer and we use it like that to transfer or to buy goods and services or whatnot, it's just hard because it has to go through the normal banking system. What do you think? So you mentioned that about the policy and how they are continuously going to move us in this direction, and it may or may not work. Do you think that the chaos that we're seeing with the more divisiveness within our country, the politics, all of that? I mean, some people like Neil Howard talking about. He wrote The Fourth Turning, talking about how we haven't seen this much divisiveness since the Civil War, Revolutionary War. Do you think that's going to be a catalyst that could help usher in this type of thing where cash eventually gets banned or economic collapse or things like that?
Daryl, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, no one knows, but I think you hit a couple key points of Neil Howe's book and, the illness. I mean, between the illness and the splitting of the nation into, this left-right paradigm and others issues, it certainly is, I would say, a distraction. It's not that it isn't real, but it diverts people's attention from the failing economic system. And I want to define the economic system as our physical reality: how much food is on the shelves, how many jobs are available, how many automobiles are produced, what factories are being, built, what factories are being closed. So that's your economic activity, which is distinctly different from the financial markets, which is how high a given index may be in terms of a number, or how much currency is printed in terms of amount of digits that are, typed into a computer somewhere. So you can have an expanding money supply and a decreasing economic system, which is exactly what we have. We've got issues as you know, Daryl, in food, in energy, in distribution, in many areas that are critical to our well-being. And this is of grave concern to someone such as myself and yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So there's been a lot of regulatory talks. I think they tried to slip some last minute laws in the infrastructure bill regarding the regulatory actions on cryptocurrencies and such. What are you? Do you have a finger on kind of what's going on in that area?
Yes. When let's see, I forget how long it's been. I'd say at least 3 years that we do blockchain brief every month and have in the Morgan Report for years. And there's no doubt that it's a very important part of the system going forward, presently and going forward. And my take has been that what we talked about earlier, that that this is the direction that we're moving, and yet it is not as free market as many people think. It is centralized for the most part. Even if you think you're in a decentralized or a DeFi kind of a system, it's not necessarily true if you've got to be KYC, know your customer. So you're in somebody's exchange somewhere and they have all the information on you. So you really can't be that anonymous. I mean, if you just do a thought experiment and just say that there's a cyber attack on, let's say, XYZ Bank, and it's a nationwide bank like a Chase or something like that, or Bank of America, pick one. I'm just giving a thought experiment. But let's say that all the accounts in that banking system were null and void for 2 days because of a cyber attack. What would that do? Well, do quite a bit. So, I'm not trying to paint doom and gloom, but I am trying to prepare people for the situation that I've already seen in a way, which means what we've seen with the meat packing plant, I forget the 3 letters, was S something, that went down with a cyber attack, the oil pipeline that went down with the cyber attack. This is not stuff that you and I, Daryl, are making up. This is actual reality that's taking place. To put that over into a bank or a brokerage house or certain area of the country is not far-fetched at all. In fact, it pretty much goes along with what we have already been noting from the World Economic Forum with this cyber polygon, where they have done this testing about a cyber attack. And none other than the well-known Klaus Schwab has stated that if the cyber pandemic were to take place, that would make the COVID illness look like a mere inconvenience. So ponder those words for a while.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I actually been kind of just looking into that, looking forward and seeing what does conflict look like in the future? And as we're heading more towards this technological, advancements and things like that, it's going to be cybersecurity. I think that's going to be a big one. And I myself been investing in cybersecurity stocks.
That's good. No, I mean, Daryl, I'll compliment you again, and it's heartfelt. It's sincere. That's something we've been writing about in the Morgan Report, or I write the editorial, and I have help writing everything else, and I get help on the editorial occasionally. But regardless, I've been talking about that, jumping up and down in my private readership, because I don't do too much in the public domain. I don't want to sound like too much of a conspiracy theorist, but there is a lot of issues surrounding cybersecurity. I mean, huge issues, and very few people ever talk about it.
Yeah, I bet. So like with the precious metals right now, I love the analog wealth. I mean, we have cybersecurity issues. We saw, I think it was BlockFi get hacked, or some DeFi system got hacked, and a bunch of Bitcoin was stolen, like millions of it. We've seen, the oil pipeline and stuff. And so that's kind of something that gives me more security in having an actual physical metal in my hand. And right now it's seeming like gold is a contrarian investment. That's what the sentiment that I've been getting with some of the people that, I interact with and follow. We obviously have gold bugs in the space as well, but it's not getting mainstream media talking about it, and which is a good thing. It makes it seem like, okay, well, this is a hated asset right now or whatnot. But they're talking a lot about Bitcoin and crypto. So would you say it's a contrary investment right now?
I would, Daryl. I think that was a very good question to ask, because if you go back, let's say 20 years or so, I mean, what did you have as an alternative to the dollar? And all you really had was gold and silver. I mean, you could say real estate, but for the most part, as a money, you really only had one thing. You had the currency, or you had precious metals. Fast forward to present day, and you've really seen a push into the cryptocurrency space, which on free market, I can't sit here and be a hypocrite and say, well, it shouldn't exist, or it's not as good as, or whatever. I think the market should decide. But as you said, analog wealth is superior to digital wealth any way you slice it. And it is a contrary investment because there's so much distraction. I think if you did a honest survey of Gen Z and even the millennials and asked them hardly anything about gold or silver as far as its monetary value and where it is in the Constitution, and what is its history, and how long has it been known as money? Any of those basic questions that you and I take for granted with our audience, they'd probably be stumped. They would probably be a lot more, they'd have better ability to answer questions like how many cryptocurrencies are available, how many exchanges exist, what are the most prominent exchanges for cryptocurrencies, and on and on. And that's because that is their genre for that particular age group. And again, I'm not for or against it. What I'm pointing out is answering your question. With all of that, gold, definitely, silver even more so, become a very contrary investment.
Yeah, and that's kind of like just Benjamin Graham. I mean, he talks about that in the Intelligent Investor. Like, once Wall Street starts hyping something up, you're supposed to run the opposite direction, and right now, I mean, you did get some quiet time when Bitcoin was consolidating. You would see like some negative news stories and stuff, but now it's becoming even more, talked about and stuff. And so, but gold you hardly hear about, and so like it just makes me even more bullish on gold, just because it's gonna be there, and we don't know what's gonna happen, economic collapse or whatever, or something with the banking system. You can't transition your crypto into the bank. You can't get your money out the bank. Like it could be a lot of things and that can happen. And so I'm really just holding on to the precious metals for life. I think I would say for life.
Well, let me interrupt you there. And
yeah.
This is how legacy wealth is built. I mean, if you go to someone as prominent as Jim Rickards, the way you build legacy wealth for generations after generations after generations is gold, real estate, and art. And so, gold, although it's bad-mouthed or hardly mentioned, as you say, and you're right, is still something that's preserved and passed wealth along generation to generation to generation for a very long time. And I think it will continue to do so, even though it's very unpopular at this point in time.
Yeah, and it's really just unpopular, I think in more developed societies or Western culture, because, talking with a good friend of mine, he's from northern Iraq, and he said they still buy gold for weddings, and like you still have like those areas over there where gold is really wealth. I mean, India and all these places, and obviously, the spot price of gold, it can be debated a lot of different ways, especially with the paper markets and stuff, but. So right now, the market sentiment towards precious metals, I mean, we kind of talking about that. Do you think that the market participants are acting irrational? I mean, there's like, I wasn't really in this before a year ago, but like since COVID and everything, I've been involved into the markets, and it just seems like people are getting emotional over every news article. They're selling off, or the Fed's tapering, they're selling off, or something happens and gold drops $100 overnight. It just seems like people are reacting based off of narratives instead of like sound investment strategies.
Yeah, it's a very good question again. First of all, the sentiment is starting to wane. So if you have, your Wall Street silver crowd, which I admire and I'm very grateful that they exist and they have helped spread the news about honest money, silver especially. But some of them are in, higher prices, February, March, April, and now they're seeing the market go sideways to down, and they're getting discouraged. And that's just normal human emotion. There's nothing wrong with that. But then they're starting to question, the whole silver story. And it's only been less than a year for a lot of them that have really participated. So sentiment is dwindling. But I do want to point out that most of these sell-offs are paper paradigms only. They don't reflect any physical transfer of metal. It does a little bit, but it really is more of a derivatives move than it is a physical move. There's not that many people that are Wall Street silverbacks that are saying, it hit 24, I bought it at 30, I can hardly wait to go sell it. Most of them are buying more, which puts more upward pressure eventually on the market. So although they may be discouraged and may be waiting for lower prices to buy more, once the silver price recovers back to say 27, 28, a lot of those people that were discouraged now at the end of August may be very, very enthused by the end of September. So it's a long-term situation. Silver's not going away. It's more critical, more essential than it's ever been. And I do want to just interject, and maybe slightly off topic, but with what we're facing, and you know my work fairly well, Daryl, we've spoken before, as you said, if you are just making it, you're in a rat race and you're on that wheel and you can't get off, please, before you buy any silver to preserve your wealth, buy extra food, really manage your budget, see where there's things that you can cut back that you don't need. Might be things that you like to do and you're used to doing, but maybe, you're going to have to give them up. Mm-hmm. We are in a situation now where we're rapidly changing, as I said before, the physical economic system, where we're going to have less available across the board, not only food, but, you'll probably be able to drive less because energy costs more. You probably won't be able to go have as much entertainment as perhaps you're used to because rent's been increased and all these things. So I just want to pause there, if you don't mind, Daryl. Look, I'm here to help as many people as I possibly can. I've certainly got my detractors. That's fine. I've always had some. My point is that my heart's open to the greater humanity. And look, you got to eat. Mm-hmm. And buying food today may be one of the smarter things you do if the inflationary environment that we're experiencing now continues, and I believe it will.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that becomes, wealth in a bad situation, really bad situation. I remember last year during COVID, during a lot of the lockdowns, I was buying a lot of seeds, like organic corn seeds, carrot seeds. I didn't go out there and plant any of them. I really need to learn how to garden, but I just bought them and just stacked them up. Just like, hey, these may come in handy someday. Went and bought a deep freezer. Filled that up, and just like, hey, we need to be prepared. Bought toilet paper once that came back on the market, stocking up on that. Like, all those essential things are very important. We saw ammunition, ammunition was scarce, and me, I'm very pro 2A and I was having a hard time. I was glad I had some stacked, but, it's just like, man, like, everything was super scarce. And so I can see how inflation is impacting people. I mean, we saw with the pipeline hack over on the East Coast, people were just loading, tanks of gas and everything. And so, I really, preach that self-sufficiency, man. It's very important. Self-reliance, self-sufficiency. So we have this current Afghanistan situation. And it seems like, a lot of these things, happening in the Middle East. We had the Suez Canal. We've had, strikes in Syria. I think it was Syria or Palestine or something. So we've been having a lot of conflicts. And then now we have another conflict. What does this do to the price of oil? Because we've already seen gas prices shot up, and people are definitely getting less gas in their tanks for their dollar. So how do you think this contributes to the price of oil and the inflation in that area?
Well, I think it's precarious, meaning you've got the hurricane situation in the New Orleans area, which is a lot of refining of crude. So that is a stopgap situation where you're going to have inefficiencies through the refineries for quite some time. Biden, as soon as he got into office, basically cut off the pipeline from the north. So that cut off more supply that we were sort of counting on. And then, as you say, with what's going on in the Middle East and Afghanistan, we have uncertainty about supply. And then you also have Russia's made commentary recently about distancing themselves from the petrodollar system. So I am fearful about the oil situation. I don't want to be overly fearful, but let me put the word concerned on it and state that I think we're going to see, it's much more likely to see higher oil prices than lower. And I think once we get, and I'm just using a number as an analogy because there is no pinpoint this number and exactly that happens. But my point is, once you get or approach the $100 a barrel oil again, and I think that will happen, then I think you're going to see a different economic landscape than we already see, which is one, as we've already discussed over and over. It's a diminishing, contracting, not expanding physical economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it's been, seeing oil is pretty much almost like a contrarian investment now too. I mean, it was demonized a lot with the green energy and everything last year. I mean, we're seeing like California's having to address some power outage issues. I guess they were overly ambitious to get off coal and oil. And so, we're definitely seeing some issues in that. So you talked recently about the banking crisis, a potential banking crisis. I've talked with my audience about fractional reserve lending. We've talked about that, how we put our money in banks and they make money off of us and we don't get anything. It's almost like a pimp and a prostitute, and they're using our money to, we're not getting anything from it. And then, we have FDIC. I kind of looked into them, after listening to Simon Dixon talking about the FDIC can't bail out every single bank in the country if there were to be an economic collapse like that. So what's your take on the current banking system and how are you positioning yourself so that you can protect your wealth?
Well, there's a very interesting docudrama that I used to play when I started the speaking circuit many, many years ago. I believe it was called The Man That Took Great Britain Down. And of course, with one of my friends in the UK handed me the DVD, I thought it was about George Soros and what he did in the currency markets, but it wasn't. It was a BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, did this documentary that was a fictional take. And I'm going to answer your question. It's what happened to the banking system. And in this fiction, one of the largest banks was on the wrong side of the oil market. They were betting that oil prices were coming down. And in this fictional drama, oil fields in Saudi were getting bombed and they were on fire. And of course, it was the largest, it was Guar, I believe, one of the largest oil fields in the world was under attack. And of course, the oil price spiked. And this bank, again, was on the wrong side of that market. And so it was failing rapidly. The problem is, as this docudrama points out, all the banks are interconnected. So if one bank fails, it's like the set of dominoes. It's a very good analogy. One bank goes down, it takes the next one, it takes two more, it takes four more, and they all go down. And that's what this movie pointed out. So that's my answer. that I'm revivifying and reiterating what you said about the FDIC is almost pointless as far as really being able to back up the system. But I don't have much doubt that if a banking crisis were to occur, that since it's almost all digital, as we discussed earlier, the system would be able to punch up as many digits as needed to make people whole as far as, how much, computer money do they have. But the system's faith, confidence, trust would probably be shaken to the point where people might not trust it anymore. And that's the whole thing. It's a big con game. It's a confidence game. Once confidence is lost, very little could get it back. And that's how all of these systems fail. It's not based on how much money they printed or how much overprinting they've done, although that's part of it. That's almost a result of the loss of confidence. And you see that over and over again throughout monetary history. You're seeing it, real time in, Venezuela, Argentina, Turkey, different parts of the world. I mean, even in India, that's not in that situation. But if you look at India last year, why didn't they, buy a great deal of silver like they usually do? And the answer is, in rupee terms, silver was at an all-time high. So if you're a farmer and you're barely making it, your means of saving, as you said, and thanks for pointing that out, Daryl, that North Americans have kind of poo-pooed the precious metals and gone to crypto, but not Asia, not India, not the Middle East, not Indonesia. Anyway, the point is that you've saved and you've got the silver and you got a bad crop and now this illness comes on. So what are you going to do? You're going to live. You're going to give it up for what you saved it for. You're going to cash it in. You're going to get those rupees. You're going to go down to the grocery store and you're going to feed yourself. So, I just want to throw that out because a lot of people are not as aware of what I call the banker's games as far as making a given currency more or less valuable compared to other ones. And when you contrast that back to the precious metals, a lot of people in North America, unfortunately, don't think outside of their paradigm and what gold looks like in different currencies, because in most currencies outside of the US, gold looks fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I could sum this up to say that there's something big on the horizon. The dollar already isn't backed by any type of precious metal, gold. It isn't backed by anything. And so it's purely backed by faith. And as the digital currencies roll out, how long can that last? And so, that's I think the audience needs to think about. How long can the dollar or even your digital money be backed by the faith of the people?
Daryl, that is the question. And it boils down to the Daryl Thomases of the world. The more people are really awake and aware, the less it'll last, or it won't even, come to fruition. The bankers say, this is our new system and it's rejected. I doubt that would happen because people will be begging for a new system and please help us. We don't know what to do. But your point is exactly the most important one during the whole interview, in my estimation, because it's just, robbing Peter to pay Paul. It hasn't changed anything, really. The bankers are still in control, and that's what we don't want. That's what DeFi is all about, is that the people get to control the money again. And it's highly unlikely that will take place, although I will not give up until my dying breath. That's what I want to have happen. Yeah. But that's the question. So there'll be some that will reject it right off the bat. Yourself, myself, not that we won't use it. We might have to in order to feed our families. But nonetheless, we know intrinsically nothing's changed other than their rhetoric. You'll get some of these talking heads in the financial channels and the bought and paid for, politicians and the bought and paid for financial press. And they'll all say wonderful words about how great things are now and everything's stable and we've got a new system and yay. But the reality is it's just another game that they control. Yeah. So that's my answer.
Yeah, definitely. So at some point, he who has the gold makes the rules, and we'll see when that happening. All right. Thanks, Dave, for coming on, and appreciate you for supporting the channel and being here for the audience.
My pleasure. Just go to themorganreport.com. It's themorganreport.com and get my free newsletter. just give me a first name and an email, verify it. And I do any interviews like this that are public, I post and send to you. And then I do a private 15-minute wrap up almost every weekend. And I send that out kind of summarizing the main financial news. Just to talk about the precious metals, one or the other or both, and just give you my thoughts on that week's financial activity. So Daryl, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I'm going to be sure to link your Twitter. So everybody be sure to follow Dave on Twitter. I'll link that below, put it on the screen. And then you also have a YouTube channel, right?
That's correct. I do. It's the Morgan Report. You can find that. I think there's up to, I don't remember, 32,000, followers on my YouTube account, and that's fine. And, if you're not inclined to give us your name and email, that's fine. You can get almost everything by going to our blog on the website, and that's all for free as well.
Yeah, and I'll just say that this is a guy you can trust. I mean, you're giving your name and your social and everything to the banking system. So sign up for that newsletter. Let them be able to keep in contact with you all. And Dave, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks again, Daryl.
All right.